Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome to PMDC online lecture room. My name is Ms. Fazilat and today we will discuss about the historical drama Abraham Lincoln, which is included in the first year English elective course. This video has been divided into two parts. This is the first part. Abraham Lincoln was one of the greatest American president. Because of his strength, determination, and honesty, the great American Union remained unbroken. So this was his effort that he worked very hard for this union, and because of him, this was the Union of America which remained unbroken. And with the abolition of slavery in America, with his efforts, slavery abolished from the civilized world. Abraham Lincoln was born on 12th February 1809 on his father's farm in Kentucky. The family had little luck in Kentucky, and that is why they moved to the state of Indiana, where Abraham grew up. In his young life, he learned to know what hard work was. His education consisted of learning to read, to write, and to do arithmetic. He loved reading, however, and the few books he could get, he studied eagerly. In 1830, when he was 21, Lincoln left home and went to work in the town of New Salem. He wished very much to be a lawyer, and he studied whenever he had free moments from his work as a clerk in a store. In 1783, at the end of war with England, which had lasted for some years, the British colonies in the New World signed a peace in Paris, by which they became an independent nation. The 13 former colonies, now known as the United States of America, each state had its own government and laws, but affairs which affected all the states equally and together, that is to say, the affairs of the United States, were decided by a central government in Washington, at the head of which was a man called the President. A few years after he arrived in New Salem, Lincoln was elected a member of Illinois State Assembly, that is, the lower house of the state parliament. He was soon well learned in law and passed the necessary examination, after which he went to practice as a lawyer in Springfield, the chief city of the state of Illinois. When he arrived in Springfield, he was so poor he was able to carry all his possession in one bag. He had to borrow the horse he rode for the purpose of making the journey. He very soon became well known for his honesty and for his skill as a lawyer. In a few years, he was able to buy a house and marry. He liked best to fight the law battles of farmers. He was fighting for the rights of farmers and also storekeepers, and he didn't often lose. But at the same time, he was not very good businessman. He didn't care how he looked. He filled his old tall hat with papers which would not go into his already filled pockets. His black suit was old and worn, and to add to his untidiness, he was tall and very thin, which made his old clothes look as they might fall off him at any moment. But everywhere he went, he was liked and respected. He spent 8 years as a member of Illinois State, and this made him want to be something more than a lawyer. So he gave much time to speaking at political meetings in every part of the state of Illinois. He was as successful as a political speaker as he was a lawyer, and in 1846 he was elected a member for his state in the Congress of Central Parliament at Washington. When his duty at Washington was finished, Lincoln was a little disappointed with politics because although he had spoken boldly, no one would listen to him. He went back to Springfield and might have kept to the law and given up politics if a furious quarrel had not started between the northern and the southern states. After many difficulties, which all young countries have to experience when they are growing up, the United States of America by the middle of the 19th century had become a great nation. Their chief trade was in tobacco and cotton, most of which came from southern states of the Union. So great was the cultivation of tobacco and cotton that the Americans by themselves couldn't provide enough men to look after the crops. To do the work on the plantation, large number of Africans were bought from men who used to seize the Negroes from their home on the African west coast. The Negroes became the property of the men who bought them, and they were called slaves. The slaves were very cruelly treated by many of their owners. And by the end of the 18th century, many people all over the world were working to stop the slave trade and free the slaves so that they might have the rights of a human being just as the white man. Since 1783, many other states had joined the Union in the north, where there were no cotton and tobacco plantation. There were no slaves as they were in the south. The slave trade had been ended in Europe at the beginning of the 19th century. It was in the northern state that men in America, influenced by what had happened in Europe, began to demand that slavery should end also in the United States. Now it's time for assignment. Let me assign you an assignment. Describe briefly about Abraham Lincoln's early life. Hope students, the video will help you to complete your assignment.